I want to do a bit more of a explanation on how we use Tithonia. So we keep talking about how we use it to get onto the Kikuyu, kill Kikuyu off. So these guys here, we planted at the beginning of winter, and we planted them with long sticks. And this whole row came up nicely, but we also noticed that in some places they just don't do it. So after years of planting just these sticks, because they did work good enough, we got some feedback from a student, thanks Jared, who didn't have enough planting material and started using these guys, smaller ones, and had a lot of success with them, or more success than by planting sticks. And the reason for that, I feel, is that the ratio of living material to dead material is higher. So with these ones here, there's only a thin layer of bark that's alive, and if they get a bit dry, or whatever happens to cold, whatever, or buds get taken off, they quickly die. They don't have the reserve as these guys do. So these grow faster and they're more reliable, but they also need moisture. They both need moisture initially. So for marking, these ones are good. We try to get them about this much into the ground, and all these little knobbles you see on them, they make roots, but they need a bit of moisture to get going. And don't keep them in a bucket with water. They die quickly if you put them in water to plant them in a few days later. They don't like that. They want to be planted as quick as possible. Same with these. Yeah. So in a tall grass situation, these are still good, but then you might want to put some little ones in between. So you use these as markers and these as your insurance, right? And you get a lot more of these from a plant than the big ones. So keep that in mind. Now, these ones here, they have gone through winter. They will only just come really into growth. So at the moment they look really feeble. They don't look like they're going to take on Kikuyu. But by the end of summer, you wouldn't recognize them again. They're going to be big bushes like that. And next year, mid next year, you probably will see no Kikuyu underneath anymore. They're pretty quick on that. And I show you what happens in a few years, how they develop on another place. So this is a section that we planted in Tithonia about 4 years ago. It was really thick Kikuyu, just like this roadside was all Kikuyu going down the hill. So we put in the big sticks and we cut it back probably 12 times by now. And last year we did a reset and we put in some more trees because there was a lack of trees in there. And there are also bananas in there from quite a while back that we planted also into the Kikuyu together with Tithonia. And recently someone asked if the Tithonia allelopathy also harms other plants apart from grasses. And I heard myself saying that I'm not sure about bananas. But when I look at the bananas in there, we're gonna dig them out of the Tithonia right now. I don't actually see any problem at all. They seem to be very happy in there. And even some grasses seem to be okay with Tithonia. Like in winter we had blackouts in there as we chopped the Tithonia down, and they did all right. Sugarcane seems to be okay. Elephant grass seems to be okay. But there are, I'm sure, some other grasses that will suffer from it. And I read that you shouldn't have Tithonia close to corn. Corn doesn't like Tithonia as a partner. So keep that in mind. It's not just Kikuyu. Make your own observations, do your own experiments. But we're gonna go in here now and dig those trees out that need a bit of a burst of sunshine here. Now, trees that are longer living than Tithonia are by default able to handle that shade of Tithonia, because Tithonia prepares for the forest. So these trees are able to grow under Tithonia. However, they often go on standby. That means they just sit in there and wait until Tithonia has done its job, and then when Tithonia disappears, then they come through. But we don't want to wait for that time. So what we want to do is we want to pulse the Tithonia, and each pulse the trees can make a jump until they are above the Tithonia. So we have the best of both worlds in here. Yeah. So I take you down into the understory. So we have here one of our pineros, the South American cowrie that makes these beautiful nuts. Here's an albizia that definitely needs more light. It's an emergent, and yet even so it's underneath Tithonia, it is not suffering. It's just a bit straggly. It will recover, but we shouldn't leave it any longer. There we have a cabbage tree. Of course it handles shade all right. Then here we have sugar cane. It of course is an emergent that shouldn't be in a situation like that, but it just got overrun by Tithonia, and we prefer Tithonia at the moment. But you can see it's still healthy, but a bit of bonsai, and we will get that back into life. And then here we got a lucuma. See, right bang next to a Tithonia, and again it's healthy. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not going to be growing much. It's going to be very slow in that situation, slower than it normally is already. But with the reset of Tithonia, it will make another jump. Here's cocksfoot. I thought for a while that cocksfoot would suffer from Tithonia, but it is hanging in there. It's all right. It's not gonna die from it. It looks pretty good to me. So we planted some of that in here as an erosion stopper. Here's a mulberry. Here's a tamarillo. Also looks really healthy. Look at that. Looks really healthy. A bit spindly. So that's the problem I pointed out. So this pruning job of Tithonia should have been done about a month or two ago. So that shows you how important timing is. But it looks healthy and it will recover, I'm sure. There are avocados in there. There's a beautiful sapoti in here. And there's a cherimoya here. And then the banana, I already started taking the Tithonia down on the other side over there. So here's a banana, which is doing nice. I mean, that looks pretty good. So I don't see any problem with Tithonia and bananas. And you can see all this organic matter underneath here. It is a fantastically beautiful soil. Look at all the mycelium in there. Tithonia is just such a wonderful soil builder. There's just nothing like it. Look at that. So that's why we have it. And of course the Kikuyu is totally gone. There's just nothing of it left here. And that was knee-high Kikuyu in here. And we didn't pull it out. We didn't cover it with plastic or cardboard. We didn't even mow it when we started here. It was just going straight into the Kikuyu, and we forgot about it. And that's what it turned into. So it's really amazing again and again how you see that. And it creates this really dense shade and moisture, so you have a high fungal growth in here. And fungi do really love the cuttings of Tithonia. It's a really good fungal substrate. So yeah, it's such a beneficial plant. And if you don't live in the right climate for Tithonia, just think of other sunflowers that work for your climate. That can be burdock, cardoon, even yacon, and so on. But of all of them, Tithonia is certainly the most productive in terms of biomass and the most effective against grasses. So if you can grow it, if you're not too frosty, it's a must-have, definitely. Now, sometimes people point out that it could be invasive. Now, our Tithonias don't make seeds, but it can grow from branches that you drop, like this one here. However, they have a hard time to come up in the shade of adult Tithonias already. And in the end, it's just more of what you want anyway. But it can get messy if you have your trees in between it. So that's why we recommend planting everything in rows, including Tithonia, because it makes management so much easier. And then you know which is the plant that you wanted to have in that place and which is stuff that comes up from cuttings like that. In this case scenario, it was a patchwork, so we didn't stick to rows, and now we pay the price for it. It is harder to manage, but if you have a good botanical eye, you can recognize where your little trees are from 3 meters away already. You have no trouble. But for beginners, definitely everything in rows, and if you're on the slope, then consider contour rows, which are not straight rows, but they fit into the pattern of the landscape. So take that advice, stick to rows, makes management a lot easier, especially when things get messy anyway, as in the case with bananas and Tithonia and so on. We're gonna chop that now. Frida and me are gonna rip into that, and we show you how that looks like just in a few minutes. Yeah, so here we go. So you see we put it all nicely on contour. The nice thing about Tithonia is it's quite a straight long growth, which makes it quite easy to settle down. You really have to just cut the whips off, put them down. You don't have to take side branches off as with other trees. So that's handy. Now you see how steep that slope is and how barren the soil originally was. You can still see it sticking out, but in these areas where we can put it down, where things collect, it is a lot better already. We didn't have any casualties. We found all the trees all right, but what we see again and again is it's not dense enough with other trees that come and take the place of the canopy of the Tithonia. That's why we are still stuck in the Tithonia cycle. And you can see it's quite a messy job. It is not that easy as pruning a more mature food forest without Tithonia. So we don't want to stay too long in that phase, even though it it does increase fertility and builds up soil. We want to grow out of that within 3 years. So here we are still in 4 or 5 years. What was the mistake? Not enough other trees. We should have had more foul trees here, more brush bottles. Maybe some more cabbage trees as well. A lot of things we could have put in initially in a high number, and that was the mistake. Initially I just focused on bananas and Tithonias because the Kikuyu was so dense that I doubt that anything else would function in here. So we want to get out of that phase. So we should have had either more bananas in here or matamarillos, something that takes us quicker to another layer of vegetation that is more productive in terms of food. And we missed that potential. We are still wallowing after 5 years in Tithonia. That is not necessary, right? So it's always something to learn. There's always another potential that's untapped, and that's a learning process. There's nothing wrong with what we did here. It's just we could have done something more beneficial for our human economy here. So we keep learning, and that's how we do it. Hope you do your own learning in that, feel encouraged by that, and do your own experiments. And you know, we have the question and answers every month. Take advantage of that. It's such a great way for all of us to learn. And yeah, all the best, and see you next.